Lily Morgan never meant to cross paths with the Romano crime family. She only meant to save a pregnant woman dying on a Chicago street. But that single choice cost her the nursing exam she needed to save her little sister's life. By the next morning, a black SUV was parked outside her apartment, and the most feared Mafia boss in the Midwest was asking for her by name. From that moment on, Lily's world stopped belonging to her. Lily Morgan never believed that one morning could decide the rest of her life. But as she sprinted across the cracked sidewalks of Chicago's South Side with her nursing exam ticket crumpled in her fist, she could feel the weight of everything she'd ever fought for pressing against her ribs. The January wind clawed at her face, bitter enough to cut straight through her thin jacket, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't. The Illinois State Board licensing exam wasn't just a test, it was the one thing standing between her family and complete collapse. Passing meant she could finally get a stable job at one of Chicago's medical centers, maybe Northwestern or Mercy. Somewhere with real benefits and health insurance. Somewhere that would stop the world from slipping out from under her feet. Passing meant she might actually save Sophie. Her little sister's life was a clock ticking too fast, and every beat of Lily's heart reminded her of that shrinking countdown. She darted across a crosswalk as a bus roared past, spraying slush up her legs, but she didn't care. Sophie's face was all she saw, 8 years old, breathless from her congenital heart condition. Pretending she wasn't in pain so Lily wouldn't worry. Pretending she didn't hear their grandmother crying behind the bedroom door at night. Pretending the surgery wasn't a storm approaching faster than anyone expected. If Lily missed this exam, she would be forced to wait more than a year to retake it, and Sophie didn't have a year. She didn't even have 6 months. The doctors had said the window was closing, that the surgery cost more than anything their family could ever hope to afford, and that without insurance or financial aid, the chances were disappearing one by one. Lily kept moving because stopping meant facing the truth that she was running out of solutions. Running meant hope. Ahead, the testing center came into view, a sleek glass building rising above the decaying brick storefronts that lined the block. It looked out of place in the neighborhood, too modern, too clean, too full of promise for someone like her. She tightened her grip on the admission ticket, willing her legs to keep going. 5 minutes left. Just 5 minutes and she would be indoors, sitting at a desk, finally doing something for her family instead of just surviving. She imagined walking out later that day with the certainty that her future was beginning to shift. She imagined telling Sophie that things were going to change. She imagined breathing for the first time in years. But then she saw it, a crowd gathering at the corner, phones lifted, faces pale, the uneasy buzz of people witnessing something but not acting. Not helping. Curiosity tugged at her for a split second, but she shoved the impulse down. She didn't. Not today. The test, the deadline. Sophie. She swerved away from the commotion until a glint of metal caught her eye, followed by the unmistakable sound of an engine hissing its last breath. Against her better judgment, she turned her head just enough to see the wreck, a black Cadillac Escalade wrapped violently around a streetlight, its front end crushed inward like paper. Steam poured from under the hood, drifting across the street in thick white clouds. A woman sat slumped over the wheel, motionless, her long hair matted with blood, her swollen pregmally pressed against the airbag. Lily stopped moving, her breath froze in her throat, her body reacting before her mind caught up. She didn't want to go closer. Every rational thought screamed that she couldn't afford this, not today, not with the exam minutes away. But the training she had spent years studying surged forward, overtaking everything else. Her eyes scanned the situation with instinctive precision. The woman was unconscious, bleeding heavily, likely in distress. The angle of her torso, the way her fingers twitched against the steering wheel, the rapid rise and fall of her abdomen, all of it pointed to a serious complication. Preeclampsia, placental abruption, labor brought on by trauma. Any one of them could kill not only the mother but the baby. The crowd remained uselessly frozen, recording the scene instead of acting. People shouted but didn't touch. They waited for someone else to step in. Lily wiped her palms against her jeans, forcing herself to breathe, torn between two impossible choices. She could make it to the exam if she walked away right now. She could pretend she didn't see this. She could pretend someone else would step forward. She could pretend Sophie's life didn't depend on it. But that wasn't who she was. That wasn't who her mother raised her to be. Her stomach twisted as she stared at the Escalade again, at the woman whose life was hanging by a thread. One future was ahead of her, inside the testing center. Another was bleeding out 20 feet away. Her feet made the decision for her. She ran toward the vehicle, pushing through the semicircle of bystanders. Her hands steadied as she approached the door, her voice firm and trained as she assessed the woman's pulse, her breathing, the tension in her abdomen. When the woman opened her eyes, just briefly dark, terrified, full of a desperation that struck Lily straight through the chest, she grabbed Lily's wrist and whispered, "Save my baby, please." That was all it took. Lily's exam ticket slipped from her fingers and fluttered into the gutter, carried by the winter wind as if it were nothing more than scrap paper. In that moment, she didn't know the woman's name, didn't know she was Serena Romano, didn't know the Romano family controlled half the criminal underworld stretching from Chicago to New Jersey. She didn't know the choice she made on that sidewalk would shove her life into a world she never imagined. All she knew was that a pregnant woman was dying, and she had the skills to stop it from happening. Everything else could wait. Lily worked quickly, directing bystanders to call 911 and keep their distance while she positioned Serena's body to improve blood flow. She monitored breathing, checked for signs of fetal distress, and tried to keep Serena awake long enough for paramedics to arrive. Her heart hammered with adrenaline, but her hands stayed steady. When the ambulance finally pulled up, the paramedics looked shocked at how efficiently she had stabilized the situation. They let her ride inside, Serena refusing to release her hand. As the ambulance sped away, lights flashing across the cold Chicago streets, Lily stared at the clock mounted inside the vehicle. Her exam had already begun, her chance had already evaporated. And yet as she held Serena's trembling hand, she understood something with painful clarity. She had chosen the kind of person she wanted to be. She just had no idea that the world she had stepped into was far darker and far more dangerous than anything she had ever imagined. The cold fluorescent lights of the emergency bay washed over everything as the paramedics rushed Serena Romano through the automatic doors of Mercy General Hospital. Lily stumbled out of the ambulance behind them, her clothes streaked with blood that wasn't hers, her lungs burning from the sprint and adrenaline. She had boarded the ambulance without hesitation, the exam already lost. The consequences already spiraling through her mind, but Serena's hand had been clamped around her wrist the entire ride. And Lily could not pull away, not when the woman's life and the life of her baby hung by threads thinner than air. The hospital staff swarmed Serena immediately, snapping commands, rolling monitors, hoisting IV bags, barking vitals. Lily followed close enough to answer rapid-fire questions, the way any trained medical worker could, though she wasn't licensed yet, not officially. But she knew enough to identify the signs of worsening preeclampsia, the rapid rise in blood pressure, the tremors in Serena's fingers, the intermittent tightening of her abdomen that hinted at potential placental complications. Each symptom screamed danger. The double doors swung shut as they carried Serena into a restricted area, but before they closed completely, Serena's fingers latched onto Lily's one last time, squeezing with surprising strength. She whispered something too faint to understand, and then disappeared behind the doors. Lily stood frozen in the hallway, her hands shaking, her heart pacing in uneven, painful beats. The ambulance ride, the decisions, the exam she had sacrificed, it all hit her with the force of a collapsing building. She had no exam score, no path forward, and Sophie still needed a surgery that cost $200,000. $200,000 they didn't have. The number looped in her mind relentlessly as she walked aimlessly toward the waiting area, her footsteps heavy, her socks damp from snow melting inside her shoes. Her phone vibrated with a reminder of the exam start time, a notification now meaningless. She deleted it with a tight jaw. While she waited, she replayed everything in her mind: Serena's bloody forehead, her swollen abdomen contracting, her terrified whisper asking Lily not to leave her. Lily tried to tell herself she had done the right thing, that saving 2 lives outweighed saving an exam score. But fear gnawed at her chest. Right didn't always mean safe. Right didn't always pay rent. Right didn't always save Sophie. After what felt like hours, a nurse stepped out and approached her. Lily braced for the worst, but the nurse offered a small, appreciative nod. "You did good work stabilizing her," she said. "She and the baby have a chance because of you." Those words should have comforted Lily, but instead they sat heavily on her shoulders. A chance wasn't a guarantee. And even if Serena lived, none of it changed Lily's future. She walked out of the hospital into a gray Chicago afternoon that felt colder than the morning. Her bus ride home dragged like a punishment. Dirty snow clung to the streets, the city around her moving on with its noise and hurry, unaware that her entire world had cracked open. She rested her head against the icy window, letting the rhythm of the bus soften the chaos in her mind. People got on and off. No one paid attention to her blood-stained clothes. No one knew what she had given up. No one cared. The south side rolled into view, rows of brick buildings sagging under the weight of time, alleys littered with trash, the faint smell of exhaust and winter rot soaking the air. Home. Lily climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment, her legs stiff and numb. She already knew Sophie would ask about the exam. She already knew she didn't have an answer that wouldn't crush the little girl. But nothing prepared her for the sight of Sophie standing at the door before Lily could even reach for the handle. The 8-year-old's eyes brightened for a moment, and Lily's heart cracked right down the center. Sophie's voice was hopeful, too hopeful. "How did it go? Did you pass?" Behind her, their grandmother Margaret sat at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly as if already bracing for bad news. Lily didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her silence was answer enough. Sophie's face crumpled. Tears blurred the blue of her eyes. "It's my fault," she hiccuped. "You failed 'cause you were worried about me, didn't you?" Lily dropped to her knees, pulling Sophie close before the little girl could collapse entirely. She held Sophie's trembling body, her own throat tight with the grief of everything she couldn't give her. "It's not your fault," she whispered fiercely. "Someone needed help, and I had to help them." But Sophie, with all the bluntness of children who don't yet know how to soften truths, cried harder. "But who's going to help me?" The question stabbed Lily straight through. She didn't have an answer. She carried Sophie to the couch and stroked her hair until her sobs faded into exhausted sniffles. Their grandmother placed a shaky hand on Lily's shoulder, murmuring, "You did the right thing." But the words felt hollow, mismatched against the despair threatening to spill over. Night crept in slowly, casting long shadows across the peeling paint on the apartment walls. When Sophie and Margaret finally drifted off to sleep, Lily lay on the old, lumpy sofa bed staring at the water-stained ceiling. She replayed every possible future she could have had if she'd made a different choice: passing the exam, getting the job, affording Sophie's surgery. Each scenario dissolved as quickly as it formed. The next exam session was 1.5 years away. Sophie didn't have 1.5 years, she barely had months. Lily sat up, pulled out her phone, and searched the name printed on the sleek black card Serena had pushed into her hand before being wheeled into surgery. Romano. She tried every combination: Romano Enterprises, Romano Group, Romano Holdings. Nothing, no address, no website, no phone number. The name might as well have been a ghost drifting through the city's underbelly. The wealthy didn't have to be found, they found people when they wanted to. Lily turned the card over in her fingers, tracing the embossed letters. Serena had said her brother would find her. But Lily had grown up seeing how the world worked. Rich people forgot poor people as quickly as shutting a car door. She told herself to throw the card away, to forget it, to focus on finding a 3rd or 4th part-time job. But then she remembered Serena's bloodied eyes staring at her like she was the only person in the world who cared whether she lived. She remembered the grip on her wrist. She remembered the whispered promise. And for a moment, just a moment, she let herself wonder whether Serena's words might actually be true. 3 weeks later, with her life unraveling a little more each day, Lily would discover that Serena wasn't the kind of woman who made empty promises. But standing in that cramped, dim apartment, she had no idea yet that her decision outside the testing center had already entangled her with the most dangerous man in the Midwest, one who did not tolerate debts, one who always paid them back, and one who had already set his sights on her. 3 weeks passed with the weight of exhaustion clinging to Lily like a second skin. She woke every morning before dawn to mop the endless hallways of Mercy General Hospital, pushing a cleaning cart past rooms where she should have been practicing clinical rotations, past nurses discussing charts she knew she could read better than half of them. She watched doctors misread symptoms she recognized instantly and bit her tongue because the uniform on her back no longer gave her a voice. She went straight from scrubbing dried vomit and blood off floors to running an afternoon shift at a diner on the north side, carrying plates heavy enough to bruise her wrists for $30 in tips on a good night. And after all of it, she returned home to help Sophie breathe through chest tightness, to calm her grandmother's worry, and to stare at that sleek black card on her nightstand as if it held an answer she didn't dare believe existed. It was on a Thursday afternoon, cold, gray, and unremarkable, when her entire world pivoted. Lily was wiping down a sticky counter at the diner, her back aching, her eyes burning after 14 straight hours on her feet. The lunchtime crowd had thinned, leaving only a few construction workers finishing their burgers and an elderly couple sipping black coffee. The bell above the front door chimed, but the air shifted in a way that made every muscle in Lily's body tense. Conversations died mid-sentence, forks stopped halfway to mouths, heads snapped upward toward the windows. Lily frowned and followed their gaze. A black SUV, not just any SUV, but atop of the line Cadillac Escalade with windows tinted so dark they reflected the entire street, rolled to a stop directly in front of the diner. It did not belong in this neighborhood. It looked like a visiting creature from another world, a world Lily had never stepped foot in. Before the engine even cut off, two men stepped out. Both wore tailored black suits, the kind that never wrinkled, the kind you only saw in movies or courtrooms. Their shoes shone like mirrors, and their posture radiated the sort of confidence only held by men who never needed to look over their shoulders, because everyone else feared them first. The taller one scanned the diner as if assessing it for threats. His dark hair was slicked neatly back, his jaw sharp, his expression unreadable. His gaze brushed past the customers, past the kitchen door, past the tables until it landed on Lily. The moment his eyes found her, something cold slid down her spine. She set down her rag and straightened, steadying herself. The second man held the door open, and they walked inside with a presence that bent the air around them. Ruby, the diner owner, hurried forward with a mix of irritation and intimidation on her face. She tried to block their path, her voice wavering. "You can't just walk in here like you own the place." But the men didn't even look at her. They only looked at Lily. The taller one stepped forward, his gaze fixed on her like he already knew everything about her. "Lily Morgan," he said. Not a question. A statement carved in stone. The diner went so quiet Lily could hear the refrigerator humming behind the counter. She swallowed. "Who are you?" Her voice was steady, but she felt the tremor in her hands. "I'm Luca Moretti," he answered, sliding his hands into his pockets with a calmness that felt rehearsed. "My boss wants to see you." Lily stared at him. "Your boss?" She shook her head, her heartbeat rising. "I'm not going anywhere with strangers." Luca's lips curved, not a smile, more like an acknowledgement of her spirit. "This isn't an invitation," he said softly. "It's a summons." Lily took a step back. "If I refuse?" His expression didn't change. He tilted his head, studying her with the patience of a wolf watching its prey tire itself out. "You have a sister, Sophie Morgan, 8 years old, congenital heart disease. Your grandmother Margaret lives with you in a third-floor walk-up on Halsted. Sophie's surgery deadline is approaching. You work here and at Mercy General. You make $60 a day, sometimes less. Do you want me to continue?" Her blood turned to ice. They knew everything. Not just public information, things that required someone to dig, to watch, to record. Suddenly the black card on her nightstand didn't feel like an empty promise. It felt like a warning she failed to understand. Ruby stepped forward again, her voice shaking. "You need to leave her alone." Luca didn't spare her a glance. "We were not here for trouble. Miss Morgan is coming with us." Lily's breath quickened. She could run, she could scream, she could refuse. But what would that change? These men found her once. They could find her again. And if they knew everything about her family, then any danger she brought upon herself would ripple outward, touching the only two people she had left in the world. She nodded once, small, reluctant, but enough. Luca stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "After you." The snowy wind slapped her face the moment she stepped outside, grounding her as she approached the escalade. The door opened with a soft click, revealing a leather interior that smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive she couldn't name. Lily slid into the seat, and the door closed with a sound that felt final. As they drove, Chicago blurred outside the window, shifting from worn-down streets to glittering downtown towers, then crossing into neighborhoods so wealthy they seemed pulled from a different universe. Lily kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, refusing to show fear even as dread twisted her stomach. After nearly 30 minutes, the escalade turned toward a gated property on the North Shore, an estate so large it looked like a small palace. Massive iron gates opened slowly as they approached, revealing manicured grounds, security guards positioned like statues, and a mansion designed to intimidate anyone who dared step inside. Lily's heart thudded painfully. "Who exactly is your boss?" Luca's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Dominic Romano." The name hit her like a blow. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. The man whispered about in news reports, the rumored head of a crime syndicate that law enforcement never quite managed to pin down. A man both feared and mythologized. The escalade stopped at the front entrance, and before Lily could gather her thoughts, the doors opened. Luca motioned for her to follow him inside. Her legs felt heavy as she stepped onto the marble steps, entering a world she never wanted to touch. She didn't know yet that her life wouldn't just brush against the Romano Empire, it would be swallowed whole. She didn't know that the decision she made in front of the testing center that morning had already tethered her fate to one of the most dangerous men in America. She only knew she was walking into a mansion to face a Mafia boss who wanted something from her. And no matter what it was, she couldn't afford to refuse. The Romano estate did not look like a home. It looked like a fortress wearing the mask of luxury. As Lily stepped through the towering front doors, she felt swallowed by the expanse of the marble foyer, its polished floor reflecting the glow of a chandelier large enough to light a hotel lobby. The air smelled faintly of Italian leather, aged wood, and something colder beneath it, an unspoken warning etched into the walls. Every detail felt intentional: the heavy drapes, the oil paintings of stern-looking men, the subtle hum of security systems she couldn't see but sensed everywhere. Luca walked ahead of her with the smooth confidence of someone who belonged here. Lily followed closely, though each step felt like she was being absorbed deeper into something she couldn't understand. As they passed through a long corridor lined with portraits, Lily felt eyes on her, real eyes, not painted ones. Guards stood at discreet intervals, dressed in suits sharp enough to cut glass, posture straight enough to signal they weren't just for show. Their gazes flicked over Lily in assessments colder than the winter air outside. She kept her chin high, refusing to let them see how small she felt in comparison. She had walked through hospital trauma wards, faced death, poverty, and exhaustion. She could handle a few intimidating men in expensive clothing. At least she hoped she could. Lucas stopped in front of a massive oak door at the end of the hall. He knocked twice and waited. A low voice came from inside, firm, controlled, carrying the weight of someone who never needed to raise it to be obeyed. "Bring her in." Luca opened the door and stepped aside, nodding for Lily to enter. She took a breath and stepped through. The room was vast yet strangely quiet, lined floor to ceiling with dark wooden shelves filled with leather-bound books. Warm light filtered through tall windows overlooking a snow-dusted garden. A heavy walnut desk stood near the far wall, but the man behind it wasn't sitting. He was by the window with his back to her, hands resting calmly in his pockets, his stance both relaxed and deliberate. When he turned, Lily felt her breath catch, not because he was handsome, though he was in a sharp, almost dangerous way, but because of the intensity of his eyes. Gray, cold, and unyielding, as if forged from the steel of Chicago itself. "Miss Morgan," he said, not a greeting, a verdict. Lily straightened. "You must be Dominic Romano." Saying his name out loud felt like stepping closer to a lion. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, then nodded slightly. "I am." He approached the desk, picked up a sleek black folder, and opened it. Lily watched him flip through pages with clinical precision. Lily Morgan. 27, born in Chicago, nursing student, mother deceased, father absent. You support your younger sister Sophie and your grandmother Margaret. 2 jobs, no financial assets, and you missed your exam 3 weeks ago. The way he recited her life felt like he was reading her skin, not a file. Lily's jaw tightened. "You had people investigate me." Dominic looked up, his gaze sharp. "I had to know the woman who saved my sister's life." His tone didn't shift, but something in his posture did, barely noticeable, like a wall adjusting its weight. "You made a choice most people wouldn't make." Lily crossed her arms. It wasn't a choice. Someone needed help. Dominic closed the folder, watching her as if measuring every movement she made. Most people would have walked into the exam. They would have told themselves someone else would help. Lily's pulse sped up. "I'm not most people." Dominic's mouth curved by a fraction, though it didn't soften his face, clearly. He walked around the desk, coming to stand less than a meter away. Up close he felt even more imposing, not just physically but in presence. The kind of presence that filled rooms and demanded gravity bend around it. "You saved Serena, and you saved my nephew." Lily blinked. "Nephew?" "Yes," Dominic said quietly. "Serena's child survived the ordeal, barely." For the first time something flickered in his eyes, not softness, but something close to sorrow buried under layers of steel. "She told me about you, about how you didn't hesitate." Lily swallowed. The memory of Serena gripping her wrist returned vividly. Anyone with training would have done the same. "But they didn't," Dominic countered. "You did." Before she could respond, he moved to the window, staring out at the snowy garden. "I owe you a debt," he said, voice lower now. "And I don't leave debts unpaid." Lily shifted uneasily. "I'm not here for payment." Dominic turned his head slightly, one eyebrow raised. "Everyone is here for something." Lily shook her head. "Not me." Dominic faced her again, studying her with a gaze that seemed to peel back her every defense. "Very well," he said. "Then allow me to make this simple. Your sister needs heart surgery, $200,000. You cannot afford it. Your exam is gone. Your future is hanging by a thread." Lily's chest tightened painfully. Hearing her situation summarized so bluntly felt like being stabbed in the truth. Dominic stepped closer, his expression unwavering. "I will pay for her surgery, all hospital costs, the best doctors. She will have her operation within 2 weeks. Lily's legs nearly gave out. The offer hit her with the force of a crashing wave. No hospital bill, no fundraising, no impossible debt. Sophie could live. She gripped the back of a leather chair to steady herself. "Why?" Dominic looked at her without blinking. "Because you saved my family." He took another step forward. "And now I want you to protect mine." Lily's brows furrowed. "Protect?" "You will become Serena's private nurse," Dominic said, "until she fully recovers. You will live here during your shifts, monitor her vitals, ensure her safety, care for her and the newborn. Lily stared at him. That's a job offer. It's more than a job, Dominic said. It's trust. Lily hesitated, and if I refuse? Dominic didn't look angry. He didn't look surprised. He only folded his hands behind his back. Then the offer ends, the surgery, the relocation, the support, everything. Her heart twisted. The room suddenly felt smaller. Sophie's face flashed in her mind. Her labored breathing, the nights she held her small hands through pain. Lily looked back at Dominic. His eyes didn't waver. He wasn't threatening her. He was stating a fact. She exhaled shakily. I don't work with anything illegal. You won't, Dominic said. Your job is care, nothing more. Lily swallowed and nodded. Then I'll do it. Dominic extended his hand. Good, you start tomorrow. When she placed her hand in his, she felt the warmth of his skin and the weight of a decision that would alter everything. And as she left the office, escorted back through the mansion's maze of corridors, one truth settled deep into her bones. She had just stepped into the Romano world, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. Lily returned to the Romano estate the next morning, her nerves twisted so tightly she could feel them pulsing under her skin. She had barely slept the night before, lying awake on the stiff sofa bed in their tiny apartment, listening to Sophie's soft breathing and her grandmother's restless coughs. The offer Dominic had made replayed in her mind repeatedly. $200,000, a fully covered surgery, a chance at survival for the person Lily loved more than her own life. But beneath all of that, something deeper sat in her chest, the fear of stepping into a world she was never meant to walk through. Yet as she stood before the massive iron gates once again, watching them slide open for her like the mouth of some sleeping beast, she reminded herself why she was here. Sophie, only Sophie. Inside, the estate looked different in the daylight, still intimidating, still too polished, but less like a threat and more like a place where power settled comfortably into every corner. The staff moved with quiet efficiency, and though their eyes flicked toward her, they didn't linger as long as yesterday. Perhaps now that she had a purpose here, she was less of an intruder. Luca met her at the entrance and gave a curt nod. Serena's waiting for you, he said. Then after a pause, he added, she's excited to see you. The hint of warmth in his voice surprised Lily. Yesterday he had been as cold as the steel gray sky above Chicago. Today he seemed almost human. Just follow me. They walked up a sweeping staircase, down a hallway lined with tall windows that looked out on the snowy garden, and stopped at a door painted a soft cream color different from the dark tones of the rest of the mansion. Luca knocked lightly and a gentle voice answered, come in. Lily stepped inside. Serena Romano looked entirely different from the bruised, bloodied woman Lily had pulled from the wrecked Escalade. She sat propped up against a stack of pillows in a sunlit bedroom, dressed in a pale blue nightgown. Her long brown hair brushed smooth over her shoulders. Though her skin still held a faint pallor and her pregnancy was unmistakably advanced, her eyes lit up the moment they landed on Lily. You came, Serena breathed, her smile warm in a way that reached beyond gratitude. I knew Dominic would find you. Lily approached slowly. How are you feeling today? Serena reached out and took her hand, squeezing gently. Better now. There was something fragile and earnest about her, the type of kindness that felt out of place in a house run by a Mafia empire. It made Lily's chest tighten. From that moment, Lily's days fell into a rhythm, one that tethered her to Serena more closely than she expected. She monitored her blood pressure, tracked fetal movements, measured swelling in Serena's hands and ankles, and coordinated with the estate doctor to adjust medication. But the job became more than clinical tasks. Serena talked. She talked a lot. About the baby she couldn't wait to meet, about the husband she had lost only 4 months earlier, about how love could feel like a miracle and a curse all at once. Some afternoons she would rest her palms on her belly and whisper to the unborn child, and Lily would feel something tug inside her, a softness she didn't often allow herself to feel. She found herself caring not because she was paid to, not because Dominic had made an offer she couldn't refuse, but because Serena was lonely. Surrounded by guards, servants, and luxury, yet still lonely, and Lily understood loneliness in a way that crossed social divides. Yet every time the door opened and Dominic appeared in the hallway, Lily felt the room shift. He rarely came inside, always checking on his sister from a distance, exchanging a few words with Serena, then disappearing before Lily could find her footing. At first she assumed he simply didn't want to interact with her, but after several days, she began to notice a pattern. He left when she entered, paused when she approached, changed direction when their paths crossed. She didn't know whether to be relieved or frustrated. One afternoon, Serena noticed her glancing toward the door as Dominic walked away and let out a soft chuckle. He's avoiding you, she said, flipping a page of the book in her lap. Lily blinked. I noticed he doesn't stay long." Serena sighed. "It isn't you, or maybe it is." Lily frowned, confused. Serena set her book aside, resting her hands on her belly. "Dominic has lost a lot, people close to him, people he trusted." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He thinks caring about someone is dangerous for him, for them." Lily felt something strange unfold in her chest, something she didn't have a name for. "I'm just here to help you," she said quietly. "That's all." Serena smiled knowingly. "Maybe. But my brother sees things he doesn't want to admit." Her gaze softened. "He may be afraid of you in ways he doesn't understand." Lily didn't know how to respond. She didn't want to think about Dominic Romano with anything resembling personal depth. He was her employer. A criminal, a man whose world she could not and should not step closer to. Yet she couldn't deny the tension she felt whenever he was near, the awareness that prickled along her skin like static electricity. The estate staff began treating Lily differently as well. Some were cautious, some respectful, some curious. They saw the way Serena lit up when Lily entered the room, the way Dominic lingered in doorways a little too long before turning away. The way guards tracked Lily when she moved through the halls not out of suspicion, but something closer to protection. And though Lily didn't want to admit it, the mansion no longer felt as unwelcoming as before. She learned which staircase creaked, which window let in the most afternoon light, which security guard had a dry sense of humor, which cook slipped extra pastries onto her plate when she worked late. She didn't belong here, but she was no longer an outsider being tolerated. She was becoming part of something she didn't fully understand. The strangest moment came one evening when she arrived early for her shift and found Dominic in the nursery Serena had prepared. He was standing beside the empty crib, one hand resting lightly on the railing, his expression unguarded in a way she had never seen. Lily froze in the doorway before she could stop herself. Dominic turned at the sound of her step, and for a fleeting heartbeat the intensity in his eyes softened as if she had caught him in a moment he rarely allowed anyone to witness. Then the wall between them slammed back into place, and he stepped past her without a word. Lily told herself it didn't matter, that whatever Dominic Romano felt or didn't feel was irrelevant to the job, to Sophie, to reality. But deep down, she sensed it was too late. Something had begun shifting between them, subtle, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. She didn't know yet that this shift would ripple through the Romano Empire, drawing her deeper into a world of loyalty, danger, and unspoken bonds. For now, she only knew that she had become essential to Serena, and Dominic hated needing anyone. Days inside the Romano estate began to fall into a quiet, steady rhythm one Lily never expected to adapt to as quickly as she did. She woke early, checked Serena's vitals, prepared her medication schedule, and spent long stretches of the day keeping Serena calm, comfortable, and healthy as she entered the final month of her pregnancy. Yet beneath the medical routine was something more complex, a growing bond between them. A sense of trust that made Serena confide in Lily the way she didn't with anyone else. Serena talked about Marco, her late husband, with a softness that cracked Lily's heart. She told stories about their first apartment in Manhattan, about the nights they stayed up dreaming of a life far away from the Romano legacy. She talked about how he would sing to the baby, even before Serena started showing. How he'd press his ear to her belly and swear he could hear the heartbeat before anyone else. Every time his name crossed her lips, Lily could feel the H in Serena's voice, the kind of H that didn't fade with time, only changed shape. Lily wasn't used to being leaned on emotionally. At home, she was the one holding everything together. The glue trying to keep her grandmother from worrying herself sick and Sophie from feeling the fear creeping into their apartment walls. Here, she still carried responsibility, of a different kind. Serena didn't need saving in the same way Sophie did not physically. At least, but she needed someone who wasn't part of the criminal empire surrounding her. Someone who didn't see her as a symbol or a shield. Someone who saw her as a person who was grieving. And Lily understood grief intimately. Yet even as her bond with Serena grew, her relationship with Dominic Romano remained a complicated thread running through her days. If Serena was warmth and vulnerability, Dominic was the storm gathering quietly in the distance. He no longer avoided Lily outright, but he still kept his distance with the precision of a man who calculated every move. She would pass him in the hallway, and he would acknowledge her with a small nod, his eyes briefly searching her face before he turned away. She didn't know if he was assessing her or guarding himself, maybe both. It wasn't until one late afternoon that she saw a crack in him, something unguarded that shifted the air around them entirely. She had just finished checking Serena's blood pressure and stepped out into the hallway to update the estate doctor when she caught sight of a figure in the doorway of the nursery across the hall. Dominic stood over the crib empty for now, awaiting Serena's baby, but the look on his face made Lily stop. He wasn't cold. He wasn't unreadable. He was staring at the tiny mobile hanging above the crib with an expression filled with ghosts. Lily didn't mean to intrude, but her foot accidentally brushed the doorframe, prompting Dominic to look up. For a split second, their eyes locked, and Lily saw everything he tried so hard to bury: the grief of losing his wife, Elena, the exhaustion of being the protector of an empire built on danger, and something new, something sharper, something that had begun the moment she stepped into his life. It hit her so unexpectedly she forgot to breathe. Dominic adjusted his posture immediately, smoothing the moment away like it never existed. "Is Serena doing well?" he asked, voice even. Lily swallowed. "Yes, stable. The medication is helping," he nodded, stepping past her. The fleeting vulnerability vanished, replaced by the impenetrable leader of the Romano crime family. But that glimpse stayed with her, circling her thoughts long after he disappeared down the stairs. As days turned to weeks, Lily began to notice more signs that Dominic was watching her, not in a predatory way, not even in a controlling way, but with a strange caution that made her wonder what he feared more: the danger surrounding her or the possibility of wanting something he thought he couldn't have. He would linger near a doorway when she laughed with Serena. He would pause mid-conversation when she entered a room. He always positioned himself between Lily and any unfamiliar figure in the estate, as if protecting her had become instinct. Lily wasn't blind. She saw these things. She just didn't know what to do with them. And then there was the night she overheard Serena speaking softly from her bedroom doorway. Serena had noticed the shift too. "He cares about you," Serena murmured, stroking her belly as she spoke. Lily shook her head. "He doesn't even talk to me unless it's about your condition." Serena gave her a knowing look. "That's how Dominic works. He keeps distance from people who matter." Lily tried to laugh it off, but the idea sank deeper than she wanted it to. Still, the mansion didn't allow her time to think too much about Dominic. Not when there were constant reminders of the world outside its walls, the world that pulsed with danger. Men in black suits rotated shifts with military precision. Cars Lily had never seen before came and went through the gates. Sometimes Luca disappeared for hours, returning with a grim expression that hinted at conflicts Lily didn't want to imagine. This wasn't a safe haven, it was a fortress because it had enemies. But in the middle of all of that, Lily found small moments of peace. Serena insisting she sit with her to watch the snow fall in the garden. The cook quietly leaving hot chocolate on the counter after long shifts. Sophie giggling during her first visit to the estate after surgery preparations began. These glimpses of gentleness made it easier to forget, however briefly, that she was living among criminals. One evening while Serena rested, Lily went for a brief walk through the garden to clear her mind. The rose bushes were skeletal now in the winter frost, yet there was a quiet beauty in their starkness. She paused near the bench overlooking the frozen fountain. A sound behind her made her turn. Dominic stood several feet away, hands in his pockets, his breath visible in the cold air. "You shouldn't walk alone," he said, not harshly but as a matter of fact truth. Lily lifted her chin. "The guards can see me from the windows. I'm fine." Dominic stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Being visible doesn't make you safe." There was something in his tone, a hint of strain that unsettled her. "Is something happening?" she asked. Dominic paused long enough that she knew the answer before he spoke. "Nothing you need to worry about." It was the same phrase Serena used when she didn't want Lily to stress, which meant something was very wrong. Their eyes met, and for the first time there was no barrier between them. Just two people caught in a storm neither fully understood. Lily's pulse quickened, though she couldn't say why. Dominic exhaled slowly as if fighting some internal battle. "Get some rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow will be a long day." She wanted to ask what tomorrow meant, but Dominic was already walking away, his figure dissolving into the shadows of the garden path. As Lily returned inside, a quiet truth settled into her chest. The Romano estate was changing her, not just her routines, not just her responsibilities, but the way her heart reacted when Dominic's gaze lingered too long. She didn't know what that meant yet. She only knew she wasn't afraid of him. And that might have been the most dangerous part. Sophie's surgery day arrived with a weight that pressed on Lily's chest from the moment she opened her eyes. Even the sunlight filtering through the Romano Penthos windows felt sharper, too bright, as if the world were holding its breath with her. She had barely slept, jolting awake each hour to check the time, afraid that if she drifted too deeply she might miss something critical. But when dawn finally broke, she forced herself up, dressed quickly, and rode with her grandmother and Sophie to Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, the same hospital Lily had once dreamed of working in as a nurse. Today, she wasn't there as staff, she was there as the terrified sisters of a child stepping into a dangerous surgery. The hospital lobby felt both comforting and intimidating, a place where Lily understood every piece of equipment, every whispered conversation between nurses, every rushed step of physicians. But today, that familiarity made it worse. She knew exactly how risky the operation was. She knew which complications could arise. She knew the survival percentages, and they terrified her more than any unknown ever could. When Sophie was taken back to prep, the little girl still squeezed Lily's hand with a small smile, doing her best to be brave. "Don't worry," Sophie had said, scratching her cheek nervously. "I'll get better. We can go to Central Park after, okay?" Lily nodded, unable to find her voice. Their grandmother clutched a rosary so tightly her knuckles went white. Hours began to crawl by in a slow, relentless march. Lily paced the waiting room, unable to sit still, unable to calm the rapid beating of her heart. Every time a doctor or nurse walked past, she jerked her head toward them, fearing they were coming to speak to her. Her grandmother whispered quiet prayers, while Lily pressed her palm against her sternum, trying to steady her breathing. She had seen trauma patients, cardiac arrests, emergency resuscitations. She held the hands of dying strangers in hospital corridors. But none of that had prepared her for this helplessness. This was her sister, the person she'd raised since she was 19. The person whose life was tied to hers in ways no one else could understand. After nearly 3 hours, Lily stepped out into a quieter hallway to breathe, leaning her back against the cool wall. Her legs felt weak, her fingers trembling. She wasn't crying, she couldn't let herself, but her chest felt heavy, full of everything she couldn't say. She slid down to the floor, pressing her forehead to her knees, because she didn't know how to keep fear from swallowing her whole. Footsteps echoed down the hall, and Lily wiped quickly at her face before looking up. Romano stood there. He wasn't supposed to be here. She hadn't told him the exact time of the surgery, only that it was happening soon, but somehow he had known. He wore a dark coat over his tailored suit, his expression unreadable, as if he was studying her carefully, trying to decipher something beyond the surface. For a moment Lily forgot to breathe. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he lowered himself down beside her, mirroring her posture against the wall. The simple act stole her breath. Romano didn't sit next to people, he stood over them, he commanded space. But now, here he was level with her, grounding her without touching her. He reached out and set a cup of hot coffee beside her leg. "You need this," he said softly. She took it, her fingers brushing his briefly, and the warmth almost startled her. They sat that way for long minutes, each heartbeat stretching into the next. Dominic didn't offer false comfort or ask if she was all right. He didn't tell her to calm down or assure her everything would be fine. He simply stayed, and that presence did more for her than any words could have. By the second hour, the hum of the hospital felt distant. Lily finally found her voice, though it cracked on the way out. "Why have you been avoiding me?" Dominic's jaw tightened slightly, his gaze stayed fixed on the opposite wall. "Because you remind me of someone." Lily's breath caught. "Who?" Dominic kept his eyes ahead. Elena, the name landed between them like a lived-in H, his wife. The one he'd lost, the one whose absence carved the hardness into his features. "She looked at me the same way you do," he continued, "like I wasn't a monster." Lily's throat tightened. "You re-not." Dominic's jaw clenched. "You don't know what I've done. I know you saved Serena. I know you protected a baby who wasn't even born yet. I know you helped my sister get this surgery." Dominic turned his head then, and the force of his gaze made Lily's breath falter. "And I know," she added softly, "that you feel more than you want to." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, recognition, maybe even fear. "Feeling gets people killed," he replied. "People I care about." Lily held his gaze. "Then why are you here?" Dominic exhaled heavily, a sound weighted with truths he refused to voice. "Because you were not someone I can ignore." Before Lily could respond, a voice called her name from the far end of the hallway. The surgeon. Lily shot to her feet. Her grandmother hurried out behind him, gripping her rosary so tightly it looked like it might break. The doctor's expression shifted when he saw Lily softening. "The surgery was successful," he said. Lily's knees nearly buckled. Relief crashed into her so fiercely she couldn't hold it back. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her body shaking with the emotional force of the moment. She laughed, choked on a sob, and hugged her grandmother tightly. So sweet, brave Sophie. She was going to live. She was going to wake up. She was going to grow up. The thought overwhelmed her until she could barely breathe through the happiness. When she finally turned back toward the hallway, Dominic was no longer sitting. He had stepped back several feet, giving her space. But his eyes held a softness she had not seen before, something unguarded, almost vulnerable. She walked toward him, wanting to thank him, truly thank him, but before she could speak, he nodded once. "Good," he said quietly. You got what you needed. Then he reached into his coat pocket and slid his hand out long enough to drop a small folded note on the seat she had been sitting on. We're even now. Before she could react, he turned and walked away down the corridor, disappearing into a crowd of visitors and hospital staff. Lily stared at the note, unfolding it with trembling fingers. 4 words written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. I told you we re-even. But her heart told her something different. What Dominic had done wasn't about debt. And the way she felt, for better or worse, was no longer something she could deny. Lily returned to the Romano estate with a rare sense of peace humming through her chest, a feeling so foreign she barely recognized it. Sophie was recovering. The surgery had gone well. For the first time in months, Lily could breathe without feeling like her lungs were wrapped in barbed wire. But beneath that relief was something else, something sharper, heavier, lingering ever since Dominic walked away in that hospital corridor. She kept replaying his words, the way he said we were even, as if severing whatever invisible thread had grown between them. But threads didn't sever so easily, not when they had already woven themselves into her thoughts. She tried to shake it off as she stepped into the estate's foyer, expecting her usual routine with Serena. Instead, she immediately sensed a shift in the air. Guards were moving with purposeful speed. Voices were lower, sharper. There was a tension running through the halls like an electric current. Luca appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, his expression grim. When he saw Lily, he slipped the phone into his pocket and gestured for her to follow. Serena's in her room, he said. She's fine, but Dominic wants you to stay close to her today. Lily frowned. Why? What's going on? Luca hesitated, a rare crack in his calm demeanor. We were dealing with something. Lily stopped walking. Luca, what kind of something? He met her gaze with a seriousness that made her stomach tighten. Nikolai Volkov. The name meant nothing to her at first. But the way Luca said it, not loud, not dramatic, but with a weight heavy as iron, told her everything she needed to know. Volkov wasn't just another gangster. Volkov was danger incarnate. Before she could ask more, Luca ushered her into Serena's room. Serena's smile faltered when she saw the tension in Lily's posture. Is everything all right? She asked, brushing a hand over her belly in a protective manner. Lily forced a reassuring smile. Yes. They just want me nearby today. Serena's eyes drifted toward the window where 2 guards were posted outside. It's Nikolai, isn't it? She murmured. Lily blinked. You know him? Not personally, Serena said, but Dominic and Nikolai Volkov, they have history. Bad history. History, that was a gentle word for something that suddenly felt much darker. Serena reached for Lily's hand, squeezing gently. Don't be afraid. Dominic won't let anything happen to you. Lily wasn't sure if that was comforting or concerning. Hours passed with unsettling stillness. Lily monitored Serena's vitals, checked fetal movement, and tried to keep her voice steady as they talked. But her mind kept drifting to Dominic. Where was he? What was happening beyond these walls? The estate felt like a fortress preparing for siege, and she was stuck inside without answers. Late afternoon shadows stretched across the room when Luca reappeared at the door. His expression was more severe than earlier. Lily, he said quietly. Dominic needs you downstairs. Now Serena's hand tightened around Lily's fingers. Lily managed a small nod. I'll be back soon. Her pulse quickened as Luca led her down the stairs and into Dominic's office. Dominic stood in the center of the room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, revealing the tension in every line of his body. He was speaking with 2 men Lily didn't recognize, though their rigid postures and scarred knuckles made their roles clear. The moment he saw Lily, his expression shifted, not softened, but sharpened into something focused, urgent. Lily, Dominic said, dismissing the men with a flick of his hand. I need to ask you something. She stepped closer, her breath tight. What is it? His eyes locked with hers, storm gray and intense. Has anyone approached you outside the estate? Anyone you didn't recognize? Anyone asking about me or Serena? The question struck her like a blow. She said, no one think, he insisted, voice low. Any unknown faces near the hospital? Lily shook her head. Only staff, my grandmother, Sophie. I wasn't looking for anything else. Dominic exhaled, pacing a short line across the room. Lily had seen him controlled, commanding, stoic, but she had never seen him like this, worried. And not about himself. Dominic, she said softly, what's happening? He stopped, his eyes meeting hers again. Volkov has resurfaced. Lily swallowed. Luca told me his name, but I don't know who he is. Dominic hesitated, not because he didn't want to tell her, but because the truth tasted bitter. Nikolai Volkov used to be my ally, he finally said, before he became one of the most dangerous men on the East Coast. Before he decided that betrayal was easier than loyalty. Lily's heartbeat quickened. What does he want? Dominic's jaw tightened. Revenge. A chill crawled along her spine. Against you. Dominic nodded. Against everyone connected to me. The gravity of his words hit her immediately. Including Serena. Dominic's voice softened only slightly, including you. Her breath stopped. Why me? Dominic stepped closer, his expression hard yet threaded with something protective. Because you saved Serena. Because you saved the baby. Because you matter more than I expected you to. Lily felt the world tilt beneath her. The intensity in Dominic's eyes made her chest tighten in ways she tried desperately to ignore. Volkov has been watching the estate, Dominic continued. He knows someone new is here, and he wants leverage. He always wants leverage. Lily forced her voice steady. So what do you need from me? Dominic looked at her like she was a piece of a puzzle he hadn't realized was essential until now. I need you to stay inside the estate, no exceptions. You don't go anywhere without Luca or one of the guards. You stay with Serena or in your room. And if anything happens, you do exactly what I tell you. Lily nodded, though her stomach twisted. Okay, say it. Dominic pressed. I need to hear it. She met his gaze without flinching. I'll do whatever you tell me. His jaw flexed, something flickering in his eyes again, something he quickly buried. Good. He turned away but then paused, his voice lower, rougher. Lily, I'm not asking because I own you. I'm asking because I can't let anything happen to you. Her heart clenched. I know. Dominic didn't move for a long moment. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something neither of them dared name. Luca chose the worst or maybe the best possible time to re-enter the room. Boss, he said briskly. We have movement on the east perimeter. Dominic straightened immediately, the softness disappearing like it had never existed. The Mafia boss returned, replacing the man Lily had glimpsed only seconds before. Get her upstairs, he ordered. Don't let her out of your sight. Luca nodded, motioning for Lily to follow. As she stepped out of the office, she glanced back once. Dominic was already issuing orders, his face carved into stone. But she knew now what lay beneath that stone. And she understood, with a mixture of dread and an ache she didn't want to name, that whatever storm Volkov was bringing, she was already woven into its center. Night fell over the Romano estate like a warning. The sky above Manhattan was unusually dark, clouds pulling tightly over the city as if preparing to bury it in a storm. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere was even heavier. Guards rotated through the hallways with higher alertness, earpieces flashing, footsteps quicker and sharper. Every door was checked twice. Every window secured. Dominic's orders were followed with military precision. And Lily, kept under Luca's close watch, felt that something terrible had already begun before anyone said it out loud. She sat with Serena in the bedroom as instructed, trying to focus on the mother, to be's breathing patterns and blood pressure instead of the gnawing anxiety that grew heavier by the minute. Serena's face was pale, her eyes flickering toward the door each time shadows shifted outside. Is he coming here? Serena whispered at one point, her hand instinctively protecting her stomach. Lily tried to steady her voice. Dominic won't let anything happen to you or the baby. You're safe here. Serena nodded, but fear lingered in her gaze. She had been born into this world, raised in it, shaped by it, and that meant she understood better than Lily ever could how real the threat was. An hour passed, then two. The mansion vibrated with distant activity, but no one entered the room. Luca peeked inside occasionally, murmuring an update to Dominic's men outside, his hand always near the weapon at his side, eyes tracking every sound. Lily sat beside Serena on the bed, maintaining calm she didn't fully feel. The baby kicked occasionally, a reminder of how fragile everything was. Near midnight, Luca's phone buzzed. He answered immediately, turning his back to the room. Lily watched, his shoulders tense, tightening like a pulled wire. When he hung up, he approached her with an urgency he tried to hide. Dominic wants you downstairs, he said. Lily blinked, startled. Now, why? Luca hesitated for a fraction of a second, something unsettled flickering across his features. He didn't explain, but it sounded serious. Serena's eyes widened. Lily, I'll be right back, Lily promised quickly, though her stomach twisted tighter. Please stay calm. I'll return as soon as I can. With a nod to Luca, she followed him down the hall. They made it halfway to the stairs before the lights flickered. Not long, just a brief dimming, but enough to make Lily freeze. What was that? She whispered. Luca didn't answer. He grabbed her arm and quickened his steps. Move. But before they reached the staircase, a thunderous explosion somewhere outside rattled the entire mansion. Lily stumbled as the floors trembled. Glass vibrated in the window frames. Luca shoved her forward, voice low and sharp. Go. They rushed down the stairs just as guards sprinted through the entryway, guns drawn, shouting commands. The estate's alarm system initiated, lights flashing along the walls. Outside, another explosion echoed in the distance, closer this time. Lily's pulse skyrocketed. What's happening? Luca didn't reply. He pulled her toward Dominic's office with a grip firm enough to leave marks. They burst through the door, and Dominic was already there, leaning over a table covered with security footage screens, heat maps, and a live perimeter feed. His sleeves were rolled up again, and he looked like a man ready for war. He didn't look at Lily immediately. He pointed to one of the screens. He breached the eastern wall. 2 cars, possibly 3. Luka cursed under his breath. He brought reinforcements. Dominik's jaw tightened. Volkov doesn't do anything halfway. Only then did he turn toward Lily, his gaze locked onto hers, intense enough to pin her in place. "We don't have time," he said. "I need you to listen carefully." Lily nodded, breath unsteady. "What do you need me to do?" But before Dominik could answer, the mansion shook again, this time from a much closer detonation. Lily gasped as the lights flickered violently overhead. "He's inside the grounds," Luka said, gripping the gun at his hip. "We have to move now." Dominik stepped toward Lily, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. For a moment, everything around them, shouting, alarms, pounding footsteps, seemed to fade beneath the gravity of his presence. He touched her arm lightly, just enough to anchor her attention. "He's after you," Dominik said, voice low. The words sliced through the air. Lily felt her blood run cold. "Me? Why? Because you matter to Serena," Dominik answered. Then, with a sharper edge, "And because you matter to me." Lily's breath caught. Dominik continued before she could respond. "Volkov knows taking you means breaking me. He wants leverage. You were the closest thing he can reach." Luka stepped closer. "Boss, we need to get her to the safe room." Dominik shook his head. "No, Volkov will expect that. He'll corner her. She stays with me." Luka hesitated only a second. "Then we move." Another explosion went off, shaking the windows and sending a cascade of dust from the ceiling. Lily flinched. Dominik grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back of the office, where a concealed door slid open behind a bookshelf. "Stay close to me," he ordered, his grip strong, grounding. She followed him into a narrow hallway lit with dim emergency lights, Luka guarding their backs. Dominik, Lily managed, breath uneven. "What does he want?" Dominik didn't slow, didn't look back. "He wants to punish me. And he wants to trade your life for something he thinks he's owed." Luka muttered a curse. "Or he wants her as bait to get Serena." Lily's heart pounded painfully. "But why Serena?" Dominik paused at a metal door, entering a passcode. The lock clicked. He pushed it open. "Because she's carrying the last piece of Marco," he said. "And Volkov hates that family as much as he hates mine." They slipped inside a secondary corridor that fed into the eastern wing. The sounds of shouting grew louder. Multiple gunshots cracked through the air, sharp booming. Lily flinched, instinctively gripping Dominik's arm. He didn't pull away. His hand slid around her waist, steadying her. "Don't look scared," he murmured. "It'll distract you, and I need you focused." She forced herself to breathe, to think, to stay upright. But then a voice echoed through the mansion, deep, accented, mocking. "Dominik! Come out and face me, you coward!" Lily froze. That was close, too close. Dominik's entire body tensed, steel hardening in his gaze. "Volkov," he said under his breath. Another taunt echoed through hall. "You hide behind your sister. Maybe I'll take the girl instead. The nurse. The one you've grown fond of." Lily's stomach dropped. Luka raised his weapon. "Boss, he's baiting you." Dominik's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "He's already inside." Before Lily could react, the emergency lights flickered and the hallway went dark, not pitch black, but dim enough to blur shapes and shadows. A door slammed somewhere nearby. Lily's pulse hammered. Then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming toward them. Dominik stepped in front of her, shielding her body with his. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Luka moved to flank them, weapon raised. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. Then another. Then 2 more. Volkov's men. "Run," Dominik ordered, but Lily couldn't move, not when danger loomed on all sides. Not when she was suddenly, undeniably aware that Dominik was preparing to put his life between her and those advancing shadows. "Dominik," she whispered, voice trembling. His hand found hers. "I'm not letting him take you." And as gunfire erupted through the corridor, Lily realized the truth cutting through her fear. Whatever Dominik felt, whatever this bond was becoming, it was powerful enough to get both of them killed. Gunfire exploded through the narrow corridor in a rapid, deafening rhythm. Dominik pulled Lily behind a support column just as bullets sparked against the marble walls, spraying fragments across the floor. Luka returned fire with swift, controlled precision, shouting for the guards as the shadows of Volkov's men advanced. Lily's heart thundered so violently she could feel it pulsing against her ribs. Her senses sharpened to a razor point, every sound, every flash, every movement pressed into her memory. Dominik crouched in front of her, shielding her with his body, one arm braced against the column, the other gripping his weapon with deadly calm. "We move on my count," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lily nodded, gripping his sleeve to anchor her mind. Dominik leaned forward, firing 2 calculated shots that brought down one of the attackers. "Now," he barked, pulling her with him as they sprinted down the corridor. Luka covered them from behind, taking down another assailant. But as they reached the end of the hallway, a figure stepped out from the shadows, head tall, broad-shouldered, and smiling with the kind of ease that boiled Lily's blood cold. Nikolay Volkov. His easy blue eyes flicked over Lily before settling on Dominic, the smile widening. Finally, he drawled, lifting his hands mockingly, as if greeting an old friend. "You didn't disappoint me. I knew if I dangled the right bait you'd show." Dominic moved Lily behind him with a single step. "You made a big mistake coming here," he said, voice low, lethal. Volkov chuckled. Dominic. You say that like I didn't plan every piece of this evening." Besides, his gaze slid to Lily again. "I couldn't resist meeting the woman causing so much trouble in your mind." Lily's stomach churned, but she held Volkov's gaze. She didn't want him to see fear. Volkov raised a brow at her boldness. "Pretty, no wonder you were unraveling him." Dominic tensed, and Luka lifted his gun, but Volkov merely waved a hand. "Relax. If I wanted her dead, she'd already be gone." Behind him, more shadows gathered. Dominic was outnumbered, Luka was too, and Lily had no way out. Dominic stepped forward, voice sharp. "Let her go." "You want me? I'm right here." Volkov tilted his head. "I don't want you. I want to ruin you." He gestured lazily toward Lily, "and she's the perfect place to start." Before Dominic could react, Volkov snapped his fingers, and two of his men lunged forward, seizing Lily's arms. She fought hard, thrashing, kicking, but they were stronger trained. Still, she managed to land a knee against one of their ribs, earning a grunt. Dominic surged forward with a roar, firing at the men holding her, hitting one squarely in the shoulder. Chaos erupted again. Lily managed to break free in the confusion but stumbled backward. Volkov reached for her, grabbing her wrist with terrifying ease. "Enough games," he hissed, but Lily reacted faster than even she expected. She twisted her wrist inward, ducked under his arm, and drove her elbow into his ribs. The shock on Volkov's face was enough to buy her a second. Dominic seized the moment, charging forward. He collided with Volkov in a brutal impact, sending both men crashing into the wall. Luka grabbed Lily and pulled her behind him. "Stay with me," he ordered. Lily didn't argue this time. Dominic and Volkov fought with raw fury, no calculated elegance, no restraint, blood, bone, years of hatred unleashed in one violent collision. Dominic landed two crushing blows to Volkov's jaw, but Volkov retaliated with a knife drawn from his belt, slashing across Dominic's shoulder. Lily gasped as blood darkened his shirt. "Dominic?" she cried, moving forward instinctively, but Luka held her back. "No, don't," he said through clenched teeth. Dominic didn't falter. He tackled Volkov against a column, disarming him with a force that echoed through the hall. They grappled, fists flying, until Dominic finally overpowered Volkov, slamming him to the ground and pressing a knee against his chest. He grabbed the fallen knife, holding it to Volkov's throat. "This ends now," Dominic growled. Volkov coughed blood and smiled. "Do it. Be the monster they say you are." Dominic hesitated, but only for a fraction of a second. And in that second, Volkov struck, shoving Dominic backward, scrambling to reach the second gun strapped to his boot. Lily saw it before anyone else. Volkov lifted the weapon, aimed at Dominic, and fired. Lily didn't think, she moved. Shoving Dominic to the side, she felt something slam into her ribs with the force of a metal bat. She collapsed, air ripped from her lungs. Dominic caught her before she hit the ground fully. "Lily!" His voice cracked, sharp with panic he never let the world hear. He looked down at her side, blood seeping through her shirt. The bullet had grazed, not penetrated deeply, but it was bleeding fast. Luka fired the final shot, taking Volkov down before he could aim again. The other attackers fled as guards stormed the hall, securing the area. Dominic gathered Lily in his arms, face pale beneath the fury. Why would you do that?" he demanded, voice raw. Lily winced, gripping his sleeve. "Because you were in the line of fire," she murmured. "I wasn't going to let him kill you." Dominic closed his eyes, briefly pain, frustration, something deeper etched across his features. "You could have died," he said. "So could you," she whispered. He stared at her, unable to argue. Luka knelt beside them. "We need the doctor, now." Dominic lifted Lily carefully, holding her as if she were the only fragile thing he had ever allowed himself to touch. He carried her through the corridors while guards stepped aside instantly. His jaw was clenched, but his eyes, those cold, steel-gray eyes, held something agonizingly human: fear, real fear. When they reached the private medical room, Dominic refused to let anyone else hold her until the doctor insisted. Even then, he stayed right by her side. The doctor cleaned the wound, stitched her quickly, assuring Dominic it wasn't life-threatening. "She'll be all right," the doctor said. "She needs rest, a few days, maybe a week." Dominic didn't look relieved, he looked wrecked. When the doctor left, Dominic sat slowly on the edge of the bed. Lily watched him through heavy eyes. "You re-hurt?" she whispered, noticing the blood on his shoulder. "Doesn't matter," he said immediately. "You matter." Her breath caught. Dominic lowered his head, hands braced against the bed frame. You stepped in front of a bullet for me, he said quietly. I don't deserve that. Lily reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his knuckles. You deserve more than you allow yourself to believe. He lifted his gaze, and for the first time every wall around him cracked. I was terrified, he admitted, not of dying, but of losing you. Lily's heart ached not with fear this time, but with something warm, overwhelming, undeniable. She squeezed his hand. I'm not going anywhere. Dominic exhaled shakily, lowering his forehead to hers. You are not my weakness, he murmured. You are the first thing in years that makes me want to be something more. Lily touched his cheek gently, then be more. He kissed her, a soft, restrained, trembling kiss that tasted of blood, fear, and all the things they had both tried so hard to deny. And when they pulled apart, Dominic whispered, whatever comes next, we face it together. And for the first time since she entered the Romano world, Lily knew she wasn't just surviving it. She was becoming part of it. In the heart of this story lies a powerful lesson about the unpredictable consequences of compassion. Lily Morgan began her journey as a woman who had almost nothing, no power, no wealth, and no safety net to fall back on. All she had was her determination to save her sister and a moral compass shaped by hardship. When she made the choice to help Serena Romano at the accident scene, she had no way of knowing that she was stepping into a world built on violence, loyalty, and dangerous alliances. But her decision was driven by something pure, her refusal to walk past someone in need. The lesson becomes clear: one act of kindness can redirect the entire course of a life, sometimes in ways both terrifying and miraculous. Another thread woven into the narrative is the idea that humanity can survive even in the darkest surroundings. Dominic Romano lives encased in a world shaped by crime, betrayal, and blood debt. Everything in his life has taught him that vulnerability is lethal. Yet Lily's unfiltered courage forces him to confront a truth he has spent years avoiding: that he is not as unfeeling as he pretends to be. Through the chaos of attacks, shifting loyalties, and life or death moments, Dominic's connection to Lily becomes a testament to how goodness can infiltrate even the hardest of hearts. The story urges us to reconsider how we perceive monsters, reminding us that people are rarely as simple as the labels the world stamps onto them. Redemption does not happen in a single moment, it happens in a series of choices. And sometimes the right person appears just in time to remind us that we are still capable of making them. Another lesson lies in the weight of sacrifice. Lily sacrifices her exam, her career path, and her sense of safety to help someone she did not know. Dominic sacrifices his emotional armor when he admits his fear of losing her. Luca risks everything to remain loyal despite the pressure from Volkov. And Serena sacrifices her peace of mind daily as she carries a baby into a world she knows is filled with danger. Each sacrifice is different in scale, but together they reveal a truth: love, whether romantic, familial, or loyal, requires giving something up. Sometimes it demands faith that the sacrifice will be worth it. Sometimes it asks you to take a risk without any guarantee of the outcome. The story emphasizes that sacrifice is not weakness, it's the clearest sign of courage. Trust also emerges as a core theme: trust in oneself, trust in others, and trust in choices that cannot be undone. Lily learns to trust her instincts even when they thrust her into terrifying territory. She learns to trust Serena as more than a patient, Luca as more than a guard, and Dominic as more than a mafia leader. Dominic learns slowly and painfully to trust that Lily isn't another person who will betray him or leave him behind. Their developing trust becomes a bridge between worlds that should never intersect. It teaches us that sometimes trust is not given because someone has earned it. Sometimes it is given because we recognize that without trust, there is no chance for change, healing, or connection. The story also highlights the impact of trauma and the importance of confronting one's past. Dominic's entire life has been shaped by loss: his wife, his peace, his sense of safety. Volkov's rage is rooted in his own shattered history. Even Serena's grief shapes her resilience and her bond with Lily. Their wounds push them, break them, and define their fears. But Lily's presence forces them to face those old wounds rather than hide behind them. Through her compassion, honesty, and refusal to be intimidated, Lily becomes a catalyst for emotional confrontation. The lesson here is simple but profound: running from the past only strengthens its power. But facing it, no matter how painful, is the first step toward reclaiming one's life. Another important message is about the cost of belonging. Lily enters the Romano world as an outsider, but the deeper she becomes intertwined with the family, the more she realizes belonging has a price. Protection comes with danger, loyalty comes with expectation, love comes with consequences. Yet she also learns that belonging brings strength, support she never had growing up. People who would risk their lives to keep her safe, and a sense of purpose she didn't expect. In a broader sense, the story reminds us that every community, every relationship, every chosen family comes with responsibilities. You cannot receive without giving. You cannot be protected without also becoming someone worth protecting. Perhaps the most inspiring lesson is that a person's circumstances do not define their worth. Lily came from poverty, but that never diminished her ability to change lives. Her lack of resources did not negate her intelligence, strength, or compassion. She walks into a world filled with men who believe power comes only from violence, fear, and reputation, yet she influences them more profoundly than any show of force ever could. The story urges us to reject the notion that greatness belongs only to those born into privilege or strength. Lily proves that integrity, courage, and kindness can reshape entire worlds, even worlds built from brutality. Finally, the story speaks to the transformative power of connection. Lily does not change Dominic by demanding it. She changes him merely by being wholly herself. Dominic does not rescue Lily from poverty or despair. He supports her while she saves her sister and builds her future. Their bond is not one-sided, nor is it instantaneous. It grows from trust, conflict, sacrifice, fear, and undeniable chemistry. Through each moment, the story teaches that genuine connection is neither delicate nor perfect. It is forged under pressure, tested by danger, strengthened by honesty, and softened by vulnerability. Love, real, meaningful love, is not a weakness. It is a force that can alter the course of entire lives. In the end, the lesson of the story is that bravery comes in many forms. Sometimes bravery is stepping in front of a bullet. Sometimes it is admitting you care about someone when the world has punished you for caring. Sometimes it is saving a stranger on the street. Sometimes it is believing your life has value even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. And sometimes bravery is simply choosing to stay, to fight, and to love when everything around you says that running would be easier. Lily, Dominic, Serena, Luca, they each learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. And that decision, in the end, is what turns ordinary people into the heroes of their own stories.
If you find this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming videos. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd really love to hear your feedback. Thank you for watching until the end.